So, Fiona, how did your holistic healing journey begin? How did you become a practitioner and all this kind of stuff?
Okay, so I have always been a little bit in tune and interested in things other than the physical. So even as a small child, I used to see a lot of different colours and was always the child down the bottom of the garden talking to the fairies, so to speak. So, even in my teenage years, I started to do some learning and research into meditation, Reiki, color therapy, which led me down the path of discovering about vibrations and the different levels of vibrations. So I lived a pretty normal life, worked, getting married, having kids, things like that. But the main catalyst was when I was caring for my parents towards the end of their life. Firstly, my father. And I discovered that through compassion and intention, I was actually able to help him in ways of calming the mind and physical pain. And then again, a few years later, the same thing with my mother. She was passing in quite a lot of pain for the last couple of years. So again, by applying intention, compassion, presence, power of the mind, I was able to help ease her pain as well, mentally and physically. So then I decided to solidify it into some certifications, I suppose you'd call, and get some framework around what I was doing with my mind and heart. So I became Reiki qualified to master level, and then I discovered a modality called kinesiology, which basically brought in so many different things that I had been, self-learning about, being the energy systems of the body, chakras, meridians, auras, dantians, all sorts of different philosophies. I also studied anything I could get my hands on. I'm a qualified NLP practitioner, which is neuro-linguistic programming. So I got into a bit of the mind medicine with hypnotism and belief systems. So I'm also a access bars of consciousness practitioner, which deals with the belief systems that we live our life by. So it's been a long journey of, 30 years of learning and self-discovery, and then most recently in the last 10 years of actually practicing this for other people.
Nice. Okay, very cool. That's a great intro. And yeah, I mean, we got to know a little bit about your practices and stuff like that. So, my channel has a lot of people who practice metaphysical abilities and stuff like that. Like aside from healing, can you perform? You mentioned seeing spirits and stuff like that earlier. Like, do you have any metaphysical experiences besides healing that you want to share?
Yes, and this is something that I don't do as a practice for other people so much unless invited, but I've definitely had experiences in the past where I have seen things from other. I can see auras. I can tune into, if you know or have heard of the idea of universal consciousness, basically that people hear things, people hear spirits, people hear thoughts. So to a degree, I have been able through my life and still can to tune into that universal consciousness and pick up on people's thoughts, feelings, and that's something that has had to have a lot of framework around it, because to live a normal life, you really have to tune into your own frequency and your own bandwidth, so to speak. It's quite distracting if you are walking around hearing other people's thoughts, seeing auras, colors, different interdimensional things around people. So it's definitely something that I do. I've also played with the idea of thought technology, telekinesis as yourself, but tapping into people's thoughts and influencing them to a degree as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
once we tap into that universal consciousness, there's a whole world of discovery and things you can do out there. But there's definitely a lot of moral aspects and boundaries that you need to respect when you tap into these sorts of things.
Right, right. So could you elaborate on that? How did you discover telekinesis and stuff like that?
It's something I used to play with as a kid, really. I was absolutely fascinated by the elements, wind,
Mm-hmm.
water, earth, the
Mm-hmm.
magnetism
Mm.
that I
So
could
even as a child,
feel
you were doing
very
airbending and
strongly.
such.
Yeah, I used to play around with it a lot, just with nature. Um, so, just playing with a leaf or a petal or flowers in the garden and just seeing what I could do with my mind to affect them. So
Wow,
I
that's really
played.
cool.
Yeah, yeah. It's again an inner world kind of thing. You talk to people about it and you get shut down quite quickly, but it's something that I've always played with and developed abilities to a stronger level where you can really move things with your mind and you can influence, as I say, people, thoughts, emotions, um, all sorts of things, weather. People used to call it prayer, but intention is the key behind it. The power we have in our mind is just
Right,
phenomenal,
right,
which led me
right.
to when I decided to go out and have a business as a practitioner. The first name that came to mind was Mind Your Matter, because
Mm.
I have proven to myself that we can alter, change, manipulate matter with the power of the mind.
Right, right. So could you elaborate? Oh, sorry, I lost my voice for a sec. Could you elaborate on your telekinesis or your flower bendings and such? So like, were you actually using chi energy to move these flowers and stuff like that, or what specifically were you doing?
Well, when I was younger, I suppose I just played around with what I could do with my thoughts. I didn't really comprehend the
Mm,
aspect of tapping into other energies outside of mine
mm,
to make that action stronger.
mm.
So it started off with that real childhood innocence and awe and the idea that anything is possible. That
Wow,
is
wow. Okay,
powerful.
okay.
And now with a lot of work that I've done, particularly with access bars of consciousness and NLP, we have so many belief systems that tell us we can't do things. If you can go back to that childhood innocence where there's no one telling you can't do anything, there is immense power in that.
Wow.
um,
Okay, okay.
so
So essentially, like you didn't really, you weren't really playing with like, because you mentioned that you were a Reiki practitioner. You weren't really playing with like chi necessarily. You were just kind of using that inner child mindset, so to speak. Because I've heard stories of children, being able to perform some incredible metaphysical abilities, perhaps because they have like a slower brain wave. I think at age 13 or something like that, your brain wave starts to go from, and I'm not a brainwave practitioner by any means, but I believe it goes from like a alpha to like a beta or something like that. If I'm not mistaken. Do you know anything
yeah,
about
very
that?
much
Or?
so. Yeah,
Right.
children do very much live in a different brainwave states, theta brainwaves, delta brainwaves, and as the frontal cortex kicks in as we grow older, and then we start to have the executive functioning of responsibility and reason.
Hmm.
We can reason our way out of a lot of the things that as adults we're trying to tap back into.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so as I've learned different ways of using external energy supply, like our chi and earth energy, various sorts,
Hmm.
you can amplify it,
Hmm.
but I still think it's hard to compare with, as I say, that just absolute childhood thought that anything is possible. So if we can tap back into that purity that we are born with from the divine,
Hmm.
we can do all sorts of things.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So, Fiona, do you follow like a particular diet? Like, obviously you are a holistic practitioner. I mean, I'm pretty sure you are big into like, eating a certain way. Like, are you like a vegan? Are you vegetarian? Are you like organic? Do you follow any kind of particular diet at all? Or
Well, I do to a degree. I remain healthy and active, mind, body, and soul.
hmm
I do yoga. I meditate. As
hmm
far as what I put into my body, I would call it. Actually, a friend gave me the idea of this term, but it's probably more a selectitarian. I eat what my body says I need. For the
I
most
see.
part, I try and consume organic, fresh fruit and vegetables,
hmm
raw.
hmm
I try and stay away from inflammatory foods
hmm
like gluten and
hmm
sugar and
hmm
corn, artificial colorings, preservatives, that sort of thing.
hmm
Uh, it's pretty difficult to do sometimes in today's fast-paced world. I'm a mother, a wife, 3 kids. Life gets pretty busy, so
Right, right.
sometimes I don't consume what I'd ultimately like to, but I do listen to my body. For the most part, I don't eat meat, but occasionally I know my body needs particular minerals that
Mm,
I can't get from what I'm consuming at the time. So
I
if I
see.
need to eat some red meat, I bless it, I thank it, and I consume it. And I
Nice,
also use, again, intention to help my body process it
nice,
because different foods have different vibrations and different energy in the body. So if I do
nice.
eat meat, my body responds to the iron that I'm getting and the various
hmm
other things. But
hmm
then I also use my own mental energy to help process that denseness through the digestive
Right,
system.
right, right. That's awesome. So, Fiona, you've been did you say you've been a practitioner for how long? I'm sorry, 30 years you
Well,
said?
I've worked on other people. Well, you'd say probably for about 15 years. But as
15 years?
far as
Okay.
putting myself out there and treating people as clients, it's probably only been more like 4 years
Four
because
years? Okay.
again with mortgages, cars, things like this, it's pretty difficult to sustain yourself as a practitioner.
Right,
It's getting
right,
easier now as more people are reaching to complementary practices.
right,
Um, but yeah, I see clients every week for the last few years, and do it as much as I can around the other work that I do. I used to
right.
be, a pretty high flyer, 6-figure income earning uh, financial executive.
hmm
Um, but it definitely poisoned the soul. So I've tried to find ways to earn an income that still allows me to be present and help
Right.
myself and my fellow man. So
That's awesome. That is so cool. So, like, what would you say? Like, what type of success stories can you share as far as healing people and stuff like that?
well, I've been able to help people heal themselves, mainly
hmm
through mental illness. I work on a lot of people with anxiety, depression, people with autism. I have a
hmm
lot of success with just helping them calm their mind to a state that they can function in society. Physically, I have helped people with pain, arthritis, diabetes, a lot of the chronic conditions that people have, like lupus, fibromyalgia, degenerative things. I have a great success rate with. And it all comes down to clearing the channel and trying to be the most authentic person you can be. So a lot of the time I'm just pushing back belief systems um, to allow the body to just come to that natural harmonic resonance that we were
Wow.
born with.
Okay, okay. So you look at pretty much disease as a um like so if someone is dealing with a particular problem, you see it as there's a misalignment, if I'm understanding correctly, or there is some type of perhaps like a an unconscious limitation that you have within yourself. Like how would you Am I correct on that, or?
Yeah, absolutely. To me, it all does go down to the consciousness or the different levels of our thinking. So,
Mm-hmm.
as most people know nowadays, 5% of our life is controlled by 5% of our conscious brain. The rest of us is driven by our unconscious behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
our survival mechanisms that we've set up in the first few years of our life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it goes, it's chemical reactions. We really are just a big bag of chemicals. So it starts in the mind, to me, and our thoughts. So, for example, if something happens to us from the external environment, it triggers a chemical reaction in the brain, which our body amplifies as an emotion. So it might be, and perspective is important with the age you are when something happens. As a 3-year-old, if someone jumps out and says, "Hello, little girl," because they're excited to see me, it could scare the bejesus out of me. And it an energy of fright or terror. It's like it opens a file in the body. And then every time you experience something similar through your sensory network, it adds to that file to the point where eventually, I believe it overflows into a physical, mental, spiritual ailment. So what I do, particularly with kinesiology, is track back to where these things have first started, that root cause or the proximate cause of something,
Mm-hmm.
and put it back into perspective, and it allows the body to self-heal through our energetic networks. I still work with chakras, meridians, auras, dantians, because to me that is like the software that we interface our soul to the outside environment. So
Nice, nice.
I consider those to be filters built up through our life experiences. And we
Right,
just need to
right,
put them into perspective, really.
right, right, right. Okay, okay, yeah. Okay,
When
that.
something happens to us, a really strong emotion, we'll throw up a belief system like, why did that happen to me? That shouldn't have happened to me. I'm a good person. They're a bad person. Before you know it, you're a middle-aged person, so surrounded by belief systems. Your perspective is tunnel visioned, and you're only experiencing a tiny amount of what is available to us
Right,
mentally,
right.
sensory. As a child, if you said, "Look at that over there that I can see," and someone says, "Don't be silly, there's nothing there," you shut that down. This is why I keep coming at childhood innocence. Go back to that. The world is an amazing place, and we have just listened to too many things telling us it's not.
What is your website called again? Mind Your Matter Healing. Am I correct?
Mind your matter healing. Yeah.
Okay, so Fiona's website is Mind Your Matter Healing. Okay, so yeah, definitely check out Fiona's services. And you say you only so. Do you take on clients over the internet? Like, for instance, like, can someone in America come, check out your services, or
Yeah, absolutely. I have clients worldwide.
worldwide? Okay.
Yeah, I try and connect with them in a voice and video capacity, so I can get a feel of, well, we can both get a feel of each other's energy, and from there I can go through the process. If I need to do physical work on someone, I actually take on the surrogacy of I kind of superimpose them onto myself, and if I need to do any structural or physical balance work on them, I'll do it on myself, and it projects onto them. It's a pretty bizarre concept, but distance healing has been done for thousands of years. And
Right,
again, a lot of people used to just call it prayer, but when you delve into these different dimensional types of work, there is no time and space. So yeah, we can work
right.
with anyone whenever, wherever. And I don't need to connect this way either. People message me at times when they need help, and I can just apply some energy processes, and they feel relief.
Nice, nice. That is very cool.
I
Okay,
still love
well,
working hands-on, but I'm in Australia and in a small town, so I can
oh,
only get
okay.
my hands on so many people.
Right, right. Awesome, awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so, so, so much for this interview, Fiona. I mean, gained some tremendous wisdom and knowledge today from you. And yeah, just definitely people who are watching this, check out Fiona's services. She's awesome. She rocks. And yeah, hope you guys have a nice day.